Hello, and welcome to the next in the series of podcasts for the Masters in Strategic Communications 620 course. Our guest today is Pam Farrell, the Vice President of Membership for AARP. Pam, welcome to the University of Maryland Global Campus.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking the time to come and visit us today. As we get started, I'd like to learn a little bit about you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure.
How you came to be where you are today?
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you, Mitch, for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here today. So as you mentioned, I am Vice President of Membership for AARP, formerly known to many as the American Association of Retired Persons. We don't go by that anymore. We're just known as AARP for reasons I'll talk about a little bit later in this conversation. But yes, as the Vice President of Membership, my role is to acquire and retain our members. And AARP has roughly 37 million members throughout the United States. So there's a lot of work and activity that goes into maintaining and ideally growing that membership base. I've been with AARP for just over 13 years now. I actually started out in a different part of the organization, but I've been in membership for about 10 of those years, and in my current role for just under 10 years in various capacities. But in membership, what we are primarily responsible for doing is marketing to acquire and to renew our members, and we do that through a variety of marketing channels, everything from digital, which is so important and so big these days, to traditional direct mail and print. We work with third parties. We are on television, so pretty much every direct response channel available to us, we are actively in. And one thing I will mention prior to coming to AARP, most of my career has been in marketing. Prior to AARP, I worked for a division of Time Warner, again in the marketing capacity, but I actually started my career not in marketing. I started my career in accounting. I was a CPA for a large public accounting firm and ultimately went into a private practice in accounting and finance, and it was through that experience that I was given the opportunity to try my hand at marketing, and in a particular aspect of marketing, direct marketing, which we'll talk about today, which is very much right brain and left brain in terms of marketing. It's very quantitative, financial focused. So I got the opportunity to try my hand at direct response marketing, which was really great for me because it leverages everything that I know about finance and quantitative and return on investment and budgeting and looking at a profit and loss statement with the more creative side of marketing and advertising.
Maybe we'll be able to have you come back when for the next course. Our students are going to be taking will focus on business and management, where they're going to spend a lot of time, much to their chagrin, they're going to spend a lot of time learning about the budget process and profit and loss.
I'd be
happy
to, I'd be happy to, especially because really understanding the objectives of a marketing campaign, what those success metrics are, and as quantifiable as those success metrics can be, the most important will be understanding those so that individuals can really know how much they should be investing in a marketing program and whether it's actually being successful for them in terms of driving their results.
That's great. Pam, we'll have you back for sure.
Great, would love to.
If we could, I'd like to switch gears just a little bit and talk about the audiences. You mentioned that AARP has 37 million members.
Yes.
And your job in particular is to keep the ones you have and grow new ones.
And grow new ones,
absolutely. So can you tell us about the varied AARP audiences, or publics, as we call them, publics? How do you segment them?
Okay, sure. So, as you said, our audience is individuals that are 50 years old and higher. Actually, you don't have to be plug for AARP here. You don't have to be 50 years old to join AARP. Anyone can join AARP and receive the full benefits of membership. However, we begin targeting you at the age of 50 and above for membership. When I say we, I should say memberships begins targeting you, asking individuals to join once they turn 50 and above. But between 50 and 150, that's a huge swath of individuals. I think that's the silent generation, it's the baby boomer generation down through Gen X who are in their mid-50s now. And they all have very different needs, wants, and goals that AARP can help them with. So it's very important for us to be able to segment the different to segment within the entire 50-plus population. And we do that both demographically with demographic data in terms of what we know about you, your age, where you live, your household income, et cetera, as well as psychographically what your needs and wants and aspirations and interests are. So we do both demographic and psychographic targeting to determine what the most effective messages will be that resonates with the different audiences within that large universe. Somebody who's in their early to mid 50s has very different needs, wants than somebody who's in their mid or upper 70s, for example.
Right. So message, it's. I'm glad you kind of turned that on to turn the conversation towards the idea of messaging and creating different messages. Same idea, but different messages for the different audience segments that you address. One of the things that we talk about with our students is that when they're developing messages, and you see messages in a communications plan or in a marketing plan, those are kind of generic. They're key messages, they're core messages, but you may not actually see those exact words in every marketing product that you create. I was wondering if you could talk to us just a little bit about the way you go about taking that core message out of a plan and making it a part of an actual product. And what do you do? What are you doing to that core message that you see in the plan in order to make it something interesting to a particular audience segment?
Okay, sure. So I think it begins with knowing your audience and knowing the individual segments of the audience that messaging is going to be put forth for. So we take a campaign, a brand campaign, for example, that we call Take On Today, right? That is the message. That's the branding message that we want to be universal to everybody, is this aspect of take on today. AARP can help you take on today and accomplish the objectives that you have in the moment, regardless of whether that moment is I'm just turning 50 or I'm turning 75 or what have you. But that concept of take on today means different things to different people along that spectrum. And so really understanding your audience, what are the needs, the wants, the desires of folks who are in their 50s relative to what AARP has to offer versus the needs and the desires and the wants of your audience for folks who are just turning 64, 65 and getting ready for retirement versus the needs and the wants of somebody who's in their 80s and really enjoying that aspect of their retirement or struggling in many ways. So take on today means different things depending on where you are across that spectrum. Part of our job as marketers is to understand what your mindset, the psychographics, the needs and the interests that are consuming individuals at those points in time, so that we're touching on them appropriately in our messaging, whether it's aspirational because I've just turned 69 and I want to take that vacation of a lifetime and it's all about travel and enjoying life, whether it's needs based because I'm in my late 50s and I'm caring for a parent who needs caregiving information. So it's really about understanding those the triggers.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yes, right, because people, you might be a caregiver for an older
a loved
your
one.
parent,
Exactly.
right? At the same time, though, you're worried, okay, how am I going to finish getting my nest egg together
Exactly.
so that I'll be able to
And you're maybe in a transformation with your job and your career at that point in time too, and you're caring for school-aged children. So there's so many things coming at people, all of which AARP can help with. We just have to understand what are your primary needs and be able to target you such that we understand
But
what
it
your
all
primary
falls
needs
under
are.
that basic key message or core
on
message
today.
that applies to across
Exactly.
audiences.
Take on today.
Take on
exactly.
today.
And there has to be consistency with that message too, because from a branding perspective, AARP needs to come across as consistent across all of those, all of our individual disparate communications to different targets. There are certain things that must be consistent with how we talk about our brand, how our brand shows up, how we show up creatively from a format, colors standpoint, design, graphic standpoint. We are very careful to maintain that level of consistency, both in the messaging as well as the format and the look of the messaging.
Yeah, that's quite clear because everywhere you see the red and white of
Yes.
AARP and those distinctive
Exactly.
letters.
And that's not easy to do, because outside of what I do in membership, AARP is a communications engine. We have an office in every state, and the individual states do their own communications and messaging within their state. We've got our advocacy group does a lot of communications. Individual programs, our commercial service providers, they're communicating with the AARP brand as well. So it's not as easy as I'm making it sound. It's actually really, really hard, and we always need to do better. We always need to do better, and we're actually working right now on how we can continue to do better from that consistency of brand standpoint.
So how do all the wide variance in publics that you reach out to, how does that translate into the variety of products that you produce? From television to online digital, videos and banners and all the other
Facebook
things.
ads
right.
Yep.
And to print media as well.
Absolutely,
Right?
it's still very important to us.
So do you take a look at so the message, the overall key message stays the same, but the subordinate messages or the way they're presented perhaps changes with the audience segment.
Yep, exactly. With the audience segment and the particular media channel, like a message in social media, usually has some at least motion graphics, if not video, in it as well, versus a static piece that a package that you'd receive in the mail, for example, versus something that a TV ad, for example. So the graphics differ based on the program, based on the audience, because that Facebook ad is really designed to appeal to, based on the audience we're selecting, may be designed to appeal to somebody who's in their 50s or not. We may have a different Facebook ad, for example. I'm just using these Facebook as an illustrative. That's designed to appeal to a different segment of our audience based on needs and interests and our ability to.
So some of that is knowing who your audience is.
It's all about knowing who your audience
is.
is.
And some of it, though, is also knowing on where they go or where they are.
Absolutely. Right, because I'd say the two most important things are know your audience and know how to reach them. And how to reach them is all about where and how and when they want to be reached. So again, it goes back to knowing your audience in terms of what you're talking about, what you're communicating, how you're communicating, and very much where and when you're communicating.
I'm glad you mentioned when, because that's not something that we often talk about, but you can do research to find out when different audience segments go to various platforms, and when they're there.
Yep.
and that's when you want to be there.
And we do a lot of retargeting where we can too. So understanding if somebody's come to aarp.org, our website, and may have visited a particular page on aarp.org, we then can identify that individual and we will retarget them elsewhere on the next time they're on aarp.org, or where they might be online and on another site that we have the ability to to understand
Right.
that's that person that was on our website, and retarget them with a similar message based on what pages they visited us on.
Right. Just in case some of our listeners don't know what retargeting is.
Okay.
Could you
So it's understanding an individual who may have come to our website aarp.org, and we're able to, assuming they're logged into our site, we then can understand where they are and take that data, and we can identify, working with third parties, where else that individual might be on other parts of the internet.
If they go to another website,
they go to
someplace
Facebook,
else.
for example.
Facebook, for example.
We've all seen it, right? That pair of shoes that follows you along.
Exactly.
No matter what page you might be online.
That's retargeting.
That's retargeting.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, getting them back.
Getting them back.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like, oh, right.
That's and thank
Sure.
you for that. I appreciate that. So it does affect the products that you produce. I guess we know that older people, like myself, tend to use Facebook more than younger people do.
These days, yes, exactly.
That's right. And also, I would think that newspapers probably are targeted to an older.
Magazines, newspapers, magazines,
physical stuff.
So the mail, obviously.
Mail, right.
We actually and there's certain inserts that we AARP will still put in third-party mailing. So people, you may recall that in your mailbox you'll see something that's called Valpak, or we refer to it as a co-op mailing.
Right.
So it's basically an opportunity for AARP and other marketers to insert materials into this big mailing that everybody receives in their mailbox, targeted.
So
those things still work for us.
And they're relatively inexpensive.
And they are, especially direct mail for AARP, because we're a nonprofit organization. So we get the benefit of nonprofit postage, which is a big benefit, actually.
Yeah. So what role then does research play in understanding who your audience is? How important is the research that you do? Well, we talked a little bit about how important it is in tailoring those messages. What kind of research do you do?
We do a lot of research. It's a very important tool for us. It's very important for us just in terms of understanding our members, our audience, their likes, their dislikes, why they joined the AARP, what are the most important reasons for joining AARP, what are the most important reasons for renewing their AARP membership, and why they didn't renew their membership. So we use research, ongoing research, to understand our members and our prospective members in order to understand how we can be most relevant in terms of the benefits that we're talking about to them.
So what kind of research do you do?
So we do qualitative and quantitative research. So all of the information about understanding our membership, their need, why they joined, why they renewed, etc. That's all quantitative research. We do it through a variety of online surveys, sometimes even phone surveys. We don't do mail surveys as much anymore, just because it's we've just gone more towards online surveys. We also do a lot of qualitative research, focus groups, small groups, one-on-ones. We'll even come into your home and sit there with you for hours in your own home environment to talk to you about how you spend your day, what your interests and your needs are with regard to AARP. We do a lot of messaging research to understand if we're coming out with a new campaign, we're creating a new television advertisement, for example. We'll present different concepts and get individuals' feedback on different types of advertising concepts and platforms to help us decide which is the one or two that we actually want to then create. And so we'll do this preliminary research. Then we may do research after the fact, and before we take the marketing into the marketplace, we'll gauge people's response to that creative. We use dial research for video, for example, where you dial up when there's a particular point or something that you're hearing or seeing visually that appeals to you, and you dial back down when it's not appealing or it's turning you off for different reasons. And all of that helps us to refine the messaging and the actual creative execution that we then put into market. That said, my belief is that research is a tool. It's a very important tool, but it is a tool and it has limitations. To me, the best gauge is when we put something out into market and the ability to test it against another creative execution or one that we might be replacing, to really design that test so that we can understand which one is outperforming the other.
So yeah, that gets to one question that I had was, once you put a product out there, do you wait to put a product out there to see if it's working? Or I guess to some extent you try to do the research up front, but then once it's out there, you're not done, are you?
No,
you still
not done.
have to do the measurement piece,
in
right?
In many cases, it's just the beginning,
Yeah.
right? Or you're right in the middle of it, because as I said, the research helps us put our best foot forward. But it's in no case do we know that it's going to be a winner. And actually in most cases, things that I think that are going to be a winner out there in the market, you're always surprised. So research helps us put our best foot forward and make some decisions as opposed to just our own gut instincts as marketers. But then in the area of marketing that we do in membership, where it's all about testing and learning in the market, I will put a new piece of communications out in the marketplace, but I will test it against what's already out there, right?
Yeah.
Or
I guess the question of getting back to the idea of consistency in messaging is you don't want to put something out there that's going to confuse the audience from earlier messaging that you've already put out there some time ago.
Exactly. But we want to be building on it, right? And from time to time we'll do what we refer to as repositioning. We'll take, we'll take a campaign, and we'll and the messaging and the understanding of what the key emotional benefits are, and we may sort of try to reposition it with in another campaign so that we're touching on sort of different benefits. So like we talked about planning for retirement, right? When I make it up, and you're maybe in your early 60s, and there's a message that's all about planning for retirement for folks that we're targeting in that way. Well, we may decide that at a different point we want to spin that differently and not focus so much on planning for retirement, but rather on specifically Social Security and Medicare planning. And so that there are different nuances that were things that we'll dial up in terms of our messaging around what AARP does in those areas, and that we'll dial back on. So so we'll get those insights in terms of how we should be talking to that audience through research, but then we'll actually put the two different executions out in the market together at the same time together, and based on what we've identified as our success metrics, which for me is typically response rate. How many times are people clicking on that ad and then going to aarp.org compared to what they're doing with the other ad, and we can understand very very quickly which advertisement is outperforming the other.
And how do you ensure consistency of message across platforms? So, for example, you have your big campaign, Make It Today, or what was it?
Take on Today.
Take on Today. Thank you.
Yes,
Excuse me.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Take on Today. But you have a message and you want to reach a particular demographic or psychographic, and you put that on. There's the digital product, which is going to be necessarily kind of short and quick because that's how people use the digital media. But then you have a print ad, and that's going to be
package,
or a direct mail package, which is going to have a slightly longer message. So it's not going to say exactly the same thing in exactly the same way, but yet you want to get that overall overarching message. You don't want that to change.
Right.
So what are some tricks of the trade, you
Right.
know, that you
Yeah.
use to, you know, do you have any examples maybe of campaigns or products that you've created that, you know, are basically like different in, the product is different because one's maybe a digital banner ad and one is a direct mail piece,
Package, yep.
package, and yet get the same idea
Yeah.
across.
So we tend to create those at a collectively. So think of it as a multi-channel campaign that we're reaching our audience across different channels. Same audience in this case across
Correct.
different channels. And that's very important, especially today, because consumers are consuming these messages across channels all the time. So they're seeing that message on Facebook when they may be just receiving a direct mail package a week before, et cetera, and being reinforced by a television ad, right? So it's very important to create the campaign collectively so that the essence of the message, the overall theme, the overall positioning of what we're trying to sell is consistent. It's and then the actual creative, the actual products that we're creating to go into these channels it's just merely a matter of what of format and execution and what works in those channels. But the overarching theme needs to stay consistent. The overarching key benefits, in our case membership, we're trying to get people to join AARP, need to be consistent. So I will have a very short list of benefits, maybe just one key benefit on a social media ad, for example, whereas I can have a whole half of a page of all of those benefits and elaborate about them in a direct mail package, for example. But the most important benefits that we know from all that research that we've done from our members, the most important reasons why members join AARP are consistent in all the messages. We just maybe can talk about one in a bigger way on in social media versus 5 in a direct mail package. And we can use different imagery, more imagery, I should say, in a direct mail package as opposed to one key image that ideally has some movement in it on a social media ad, for example, to get your attention. But positioning is the same. Overall look and feel is the same. More detail that different channels have at their disposal than others do. They're important.
Got a question. Do your audiences tend to respond more favorably to emotional or statistical, factual kinds of messages?
I think it's emotional. As a marketer for you know, even before AARP, I think you have to appeal to people's hearts and emotions. I mean, I think about, you know, it was emotions that bought that were the reasons my husband and I bought our house, right? Emotions are the reasons I bought those last pair of shoes, and even the skim milk in my latte this morning. You know, that it's all those are what's triggering all this. That said, for AARP, that we've been very successful in membership with using a more official look to our creative products, especially in direct mail, because we're always looking to break free of the clutter. And think about when you know, if you're taking a mail piece out of your mailbox and you've got a lot of other things, and some things they look like an advertisement, junk mail, right? So the official look helps us to sort of break free from that and be more prone to be opened by someone. And we're AARP after all, so we are very deliberate in terms of how we talk about ourselves and the types of rational benefits that are important to our members. So we do a bit of a balance, but at the end of the day, I think as marketers, it's really important to nail those emotional benefits, to really understand what is it that's relevant to your target audience, relevant emotionally, because that's what's going to stick with them. I think that's very important.
I wonder if that's why digital media, or I should say motion media, is used even in the digital arena. You see a lot of motion
even
media
more.
because it's an emotional channel.
It sure is. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Before we go, I can't believe it's been just about half an hour. It's unbelievable. But I was wondering if you have any final words for our students who are getting ready to preparing for the next generation, the next generation of challenges that they're going to face as tomorrow's communicators.
Well, I do. A couple of things I want to mention. First of all, we talked about knowing your audience. That's so important. No matter where or when or how you're marketing, you need to really understand your audience and be where they are when they, when they want to receive your message. It's just that's really, really crucial. And it's getting more and more challenging, but fun because of the way that marketing has changed and evolved over the years, even in the last couple of years, in terms of marketers' ability to understand the mindset of the consumer and to target them based on that, based on their behaviors and their actions and what we know about them. That's just opened up so much more opportunity for us as marketers, but it's also made it especially important for us to be very deliberate in our communications because consumers expect us to know them. They're seeing so many messages all the time. They expect that the messages that I'm putting forward of them demonstrate that I know them and what they want and what they need. And if that falls short or we show up in a way that demonstrates that we don't know them, we've lost them. So it's very, very, very important. And then the other thing I would just say is just have fun with this. Marketing is fun. Marketing is a lot of fun. It's a lot of creativity. It's a lot of knowing your audience, and it's a lot about understanding what are your success, like what's success mean, and how do I get to that. But at the end of the day, there's just so many new and dynamic and challenging things happening in marketing today that it's a great place to play in and work in, and I would just encourage everybody to have fun with it.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. One of the things that, because the whole communications arena is fun.
It is fun.
And I, would encourage you. One of the great things about marketing, the marketing arena, is that one of the 4 P's is promotion. And that's where my students will be spending a lot of their time.
Yep.
And I'm so glad actually that we talked a lot about marketing because it's a key element within strategic communications that oftentimes gets shunted off for other communications activities that we typically spend a lot of time to. That's why I so appreciate you coming down and talking to us about AARP and the marketing efforts. There's a lot. There's a lot going on in the arena, and I know how busy you are.
Oh no, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity to come down and speak with you. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much. We'll have you come back when we start
Anytime.
talking about the business course.
Anytime.
The students I know will be very excited and delighted to learn about the mix of business with the communications field. So you can't
have one without the other.
Exactly,
Right.
It is a business. Pam, Farrell, thank you very, very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.